Hello and welcome to the Women of Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Calder-Hume. The Women of Ambition podcast is a place where we explore ambition. First, the radical act of acknowledging it within ourselves. Second, allowing space to explore what ambition means for each of us. And third, moving forward with intention. This episode is unique for a couple of reasons. Not only is it our first interview with two guests, but it is also happening in a very quick time frame. And that's because the three of us really agreed that there was a need for this topic. We recorded this today. I've edited it today. I'm publishing it today. It is less than 2 weeks since Roe v. Wade was overturned at the Supreme Court. It's going to be news to no one listening to this that this is a very divisive topic. There are a lot of heated debates going on about this, a lot of morality issues, a lot of personal rights violations, arguments and disagreements about the sanctity of life and whose life is valuable and who gets to decide who gets to live in different situations. But the reason we wanted to talk today is because we see a lack of ability for people to disagree respectfully with their friends and family, to hold space for different views. And I just think we could all learn a lot from these two guests on how to hold space for each other even when we come from different places. So this episode is slotted in kind of retroactively into our relationship segment. We're going to call this ambitious relationships with friends, ambitious friendship. And you will find out why very shortly. So we have Kathleen Rawlinson and Aubrie Howell, and they are both stay-at-home moms. They both have 3 children. They both live in Oklahoma, but they have something that is very different between them, and yet they're able to maintain their friendship. And that is that Aubrie is a Christian and Kathleen is an atheist. And their ability to maintain friendship despite this big difference is so fascinating to me. And then they actually have a podcast where they talk about their different perspectives on religion and God and purpose, and have guests come on with their own perspectives and discuss them. And I think this is just so cool. Like, here are 2 people that seem really similar, that have similar values and things, but they disagree so fundamentally on God and the existence of God. So Aubrie Howell is a Christian. She belongs to the Life Church, which is a non-denominational megachurch, is what she calls it. And Kathleen Rawlinson is an atheist. She's actually an ex-Mormon, and that will come up in our conversations because I am an active Mormon. And if you want to hear more about us discussing Mormonism as a topic, they actually have an episode where I am a guest, and it was so fun to do that with them. Those religious elements will come up in their discussion, but the focus is on navigating a relationship with somebody who has fundamentally different beliefs. And so that's kind of the context of our conversation. It's not focused on religion or focused on atheism or like ex-Mormonism or anything like that, but it is an important part of their story, an important part of why this relationship is worth looking at.
Thank you for having us.
This is my first interview with 2 people, so
Ooh.
I'm sure there's going to be crosstalk, and that's just going to be how it is. So
Right.
No worries, just bear with us.
Yeah.
How long ago did you guys meet?
It's been multiple years.
Yeah.
We've met a long time ago.
Yeah, officially the first meeting each other has been probably 3 years or something like that, 4 years maybe. But we didn't actually.
Been 5. I've lived in that house for 5 years.
But we didn't actually become close friends until much later. So my kids knew Aubrie's kids long before Aubrie and I were close. We would, wave to each other. I think once we ran into each other at Target, and we're super
really
weird.
Awkward. It was so awkward.
Because we are generally awkward, weird people.
It's because you see kids that you know, and you're like, oh my gosh, hey guys. And then there's their parents, and I've never met the parents. And I was like, oh, we know your kids. Like, and then we're like, oh, these are the atheists.
These are the atheist kids.
Yeah, because at the same time that my kids were playing with Aubrie's kids, my mother-in-law and Aubrie are actually good friends as well.
Yes.
And so this is around the time that we were leaving the church, and my mother-in-law would come talk with Aubrie and
I know a lot.
share some of her some of her,
just her
frustrations
grievances.
and
She's
sad things.
yeah.
Just things going on in her life with her friend. And so, Aubrie knew who I was and I knew who Aubrie was, but we weren't friends yet until one time we were at the neighborhood pool with the kids, of course, and Aubrie was there and just kind of was like, so what's the deal with you guys leaving the church? And my husband and I just word vomited for like 3 hours straight.
Wow.
And that sort of sealed it.
As a Christian, you hear that once you join the faith, you don't leave it. And so these people grew up in the faith, like hardcore grew up in the faith, like more so than I did. And I was like, and they left. And I was like, I don't know why.
What was your initial thought about each other before that chat? Did you have assumptions that you made about each other?
Yeah.
Tell me about those. Because I think we all have those, right? I have so many people, I'm like, maybe you're my best friend and I just haven't sat down and talked to you yet. And I just wouldn't know.
Like I said, at that time, we were either in the middle of leaving the church or very soon after. And so there was a lot of emotions and stress as far as religion in our lives. It was a very stressful topic for us and for me too. I say us, meaning my husband and I, but really it was something that I was not super thrilled to, I didn't mind talking about leaving the church, but I really was tired of people trying to get me to come to church.
Yeah.
That at that time, there was a lot of people, are either family members, people we'd grown up with, or just random visiting teachers showing up and really pushing us to get to church. And so it was something that I was very nervous about talking with Aubrie and hanging out with Aubrie. I knew from being Facebook friends with her that she was a very active Christian and that she really loved her church community. And I was always nervous that it was going to turn into, instead of being just two friends chatting at the pool, it would turn into a proselytizing situation.
Ulterior motive.
Right. And because that does happen with anybody, not just Mormons, not just Christians, with anybody, there's ulterior motives sometimes. And so that was something I think that I was nervous about. And then before we actually met, I remember seeing you, I'm sure, in a neighborhood function or something, and thinking that, assuming without knowing Aubrie, that she would judge me for who I was, because that's something that people do.
Totally.
Just things like, at that time, I had just gotten my nose pierced and I have a big tattoo and I wear a lot of, the word that's coming to my brain is skimpy, but that doesn't sound right, but it's true. I wear a lot of skimpy clothing. I really like showing skin. I have a good time in tiny shorts. And so that was something that people who were Mormon were judging me a lot on and expressing those judgments to me. And so I sort of projected that mentality onto Aubrie, even though that was never something she ever did.
Yeah.
But I did project onto her before knowing her, she's going to judge me for having a beer and having a nose ring and wearing tank tops, which is sort of a Mormon thing and something that I was experiencing, and it was unfair to put that onto Aubrie, but
She's being so nice right now. I love it. So I did end up inviting you to church. Remember?
You did once, and it wasn't pushy. I was like, oh, thanks for inviting us. No thanks. And she's like, cool, bye. And that was it.
Because if you say no to me, I'm not going to push it, because there's no reason to.
Yeah.
So I do want to kind of go on my perspective of you. I don't think we've talked this in depth, so it's kind of funny. So get comfy, because here we go. It's about to get real. So,
did it have to do with the shorts? Are you going to talk about the shorts?
Sure. So, I, like she said, my neighbor Sherry and I learned a lot about just this grief from Sherry, and it wasn't really ever a talk against her character, just about them leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Sherry's my mother-in-law.
And so I had that perspective of you. And then I remember you would come around and you would never talk to me. And I'd be like, I'm hanging out with your kids. Don't you know who I am? And that was more of like my perspective of it, is you were very standoffish towards me. And so I didn't get to get a good like evaluation of who I thought you were, but I did see your outfits and I was like, dang. But if you saw what she would wear, and still does, and it's nothing crazy.
It's pretty crazy.
It's crazy if you like, I mean, her bra is going to be showing.
Yeah.
And her shorts are going to be like short, but like your butt is rarely out unless you're bending over.
That's true. The problem with shorts is that I'm 5'10" and I have a 37-inch inseam. Literally, I have the wingspan of a bald eagle. Like, if I'm wearing clothes, they're going to be tiny because they don't make clothes for girls like me.
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't.
But
regardless, I think you're making a point that you're no longer Mormon, and I was seeing that. Yeah. And I mean, I only say that because I've heard you say that before. And so anyways, but I was seeing like this show, but you're also married and you have 3 kids and you're very like in your marriage. Like you weren't like, to me, I was told that women that dress that way, a certain way, are like a certain type of person.
Yeah.
And I was looking at you and seeing this and being like, she's not that kind of person. So I had to really shift my evaluation of that. So you aided in me looking at you and wearing certain types of clothes and being like, she's not out to get anybody else's husband. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's, that sounds so stupid. Like that's what I was taught.
No, but like, I think we all have those moments where it's like, oh, that was a false belief that's still in me. I didn't even know it's there. And then you have this person that directly contradicts that. And you're like, oh,
100%. And I was like, yes, thank you for doing that for me. And so that was fun. So we kind of bonded over, and we have this really quirky personality situation going on. If you're around us long enough, you're going to be like, wow, they're the same person personality wise.
Yeah.
And
that is one of the things that when I did start talking to, I was like, we have so much in common. Just like our the way we look at the world, regardless of religion, is very similar. Our experiences, our life, we both are stay-at-home moms in the same town. Actually talking to you, I was like, oh dude, we can make this work. Yeah.
So we went to the pool, and then we would go to my backyard, and it's kind of like a hot spot for the kids to play. And so all the neighborhood kids. And so we would all be out in the backyard drinking and talking. And I would go to my room and be like, I can't believe she's an atheist. And I'm just like, I want to be her friend.
Did it feel like a barrier?
Yeah. It was a huge barrier. And I kept being like, God, listen, I don't get it. Why would you make her like this and tell me I can't be her friend?
Why did you feel like you couldn't be friends with her?
Because of what the Bible says about unequally yoking yourself, and having certain types of friends can have bad influence on who you are. And I didn't want also the social stigma of it, because I am so involved in my church, but also it was more of a conversation between me and God. I was constantly like, I'd leave and I'd be like, seriously, what the heck? That is a great person, and I'm not supposed to be friends with them, because I felt like I've been told you're not supposed to go back and forth with Christian or with an atheist. So like I have a Southern Baptist grandma, and so she's fed a lot into me that is really toxic, fire and brimstone nastiness that is not Christianity to me, under the Christianity umbrella. Yeah. And so I'm not sure if it came from that, if it's come from the readings that I've read in the Bible, or just hearing sermons about bad things about atheists, So it's like, it just stressed me out.
I'm sorry for stressing you out a little bit.
So you felt this like deep bond attraction, like not attraction, but
it was an attraction without sexual attraction.
Yeah, right. I mean,
100%
like a personality.
It kind of sounds like someone who falls in love with someone outside of their religion.
Madly in love.
Yes.
Madly in love
with your friend.
Sexual attraction.
So like what then? Like, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so just like I have a lot of questions, and something that I do often and have done for, I want to say 5 years, more so in the past 4 years, is ask questions. And I asked a million questions to God. Why the heck would you create a human that cannot love the person that they love? Say they're gay or lesbian or bi, what the heck, or be trans? Like, what's with that, God? And so I prayed for years and years and years on that. And the conclusion that I came to with Holy Spirit conversation and lots of prayer was, there's a bigger picture here and I just can't see it. And as the years went on, I was like, they got it wrong. This Bible has it wrong. This isn't God. And so I have been like, okay, let's evaluate what is God. And I can take God out of a box that people have been putting him in and really be curious with my eyes and my brain and my soul, the one that's connected to God, to say, hey, who's God to me? And I know that might sound crazy to some people, and it's almost like you shouldn't do that, because I feel like that's what the people that are trying to keep us in a box are telling us to do.
Yeah.
And so I talked to God about it and I was like, am I allowed to be friends with this person? I just felt like God said it's fine. Like, explore that with caution. I do have to make sure that I have to evaluate who I am and not let myself, and this is with anybody, this is with Christians, not let these people influence me into something that I'm not. So one of the things, so that's kind of how I evaluated the situation, was lots of prayer and like really feeling, am I wanting this for myself, or is this okay with me and God talking back and forth? And I never once felt a pull away from her.
Kathleen, could you tell that struggle was going on? Did you have any idea?
I had no idea. Nope. I didn't. I mean, I'm not the most observant person maybe, but I had no idea that there was that much stress and like inner turmoil going on. I never realized how stressed, I guess, that Aubrie was until later. Of course, she explained to me what was going on. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. But yeah, it was never something that I could pick up on.
Like, I fall in love with people quickly, and I'm meaning putting quotations if anyone can see. Like, I fall for people and their personalities. I did at that time. I've slowly backed away from that because it's burnt me pretty bad. For me, it was I think it was 3 to 4 days of me going back and forth with God and being like, and we were hanging out with each other like every other day to every day in that time span. And I just had to release it because I don't carry things that aren't for me. And I didn't feel like that was for me anymore.
Yeah.
So I can sit with something and I can critically think about it and I can logically think about it. And then I can allow the Holy Spirit to like do whatever the Holy Spirit needs to do within me. And if that's not a push away, then I'm like jumping in head first.
You started this friendship. You obviously knew right off the bat that you had this major difference in religion, but it sounds like you shared a lot of other values and things you enjoyed and a lot of other topics. What other differences have come up since then? And how do you manage that? How do you manage disagreements?
I think the biggest differences we have at this point, besides the big major, elephant in the room that is religion, is just some of our parenting styles are slight. Like, for example, I cuss in front of my kids and I don't care if my kids cuss. Like, don't say it at school and don't say it at grandma's house, but you're probably okay. And Aubrie doesn't. And so, that's a difference of opinion in the way that we parent our children. I think growing up the way I did, I think one of the things that the church did do well was showing me that I'm not going to be the majority. At least growing up in Oklahoma as a Mormon, no. And so, no matter what, there's always somebody who's going to disagree with my beliefs, no matter what they are. And so you just kind of roll with it. And, just because you think different than me doesn't mean you're bad.
Right.
It just means you think different.
I mean, I've just had to correct her on words, and I'm like, Kathleen, you can't say the F word with my kids right there. And she's like, okay. If I ever say anything that like later I'm like, that was insensitive, I will automatically apologize.
I feel like our friendship is very proactive. We aren't lazy about it. You can't be. You have to be saying, hey, I think I may have messed up there. Are you okay? I'm okay. Are you, like that sort of thing. And there's always a level of going into interactions with each other aware that, I'm not going to sit down and bash religion with Aubrie. I'm not going to do that. That's mean. She obviously is not going to have a good time with that. And so, if I feel the need to do that sort of thing, I'll do it with somebody who shares my values and shares my religious opinions, so as not to alienate her. And so, we haven't really had any big arguments or fights or anything, just because I think we're both aware of making space for the other person's life.
So I know that like your podcast, though, you do talk about differences, and you're talking to a third party that might be like a wild card. So you're holding space for your differences. Like, what is that like? That is, I mean, I know that that's so hard. So can you speak to that?
Definitely. So like something to add is Kathleen and I have both been avid we work a lot on our mental health. And like currently, like
that is the theme of all my close friendships is we've all gone to therapy.
Your girl has to.
If you aren't before. If you aren't working on your crap, I don't know if we can talk, because I've seen people that have just spewed gross stuff towards me when they're upset with me, instead of saying, hey, like this isn't working for me, can we talk about it? Instead they're like, let me like yell at you. I'm like, okay, you're clearly got stuff going on internally, and this has nothing to do with me. So I think that Kathleen and I know that if something's going on between us, or say the third party on our show, that we can see, because we've done the work, is okay, this isn't a us thing. This isn't a I'm a Christian and they're mad at me. This is someone that was maybe Christian hurt them, and they're saying things. Like we had a guest on. So this person came in and he has been done so dirty by the church. Yeah. And the spew he was spewing, remember that? It
was a guest that has a lot of anger and bitterness towards religion, rightfully so. There's been a lot gone on in their life, which is horrific stuff that I could never imagine going through. And it was done in the name of God. And so there was a lot of, when we interviewed them, there was a lot of hateful speak towards Christians in general. Christians are blah, blah, blah. And it was very negative and very, it was very hurtful to hear as an atheist. I was like, dang, this is harsh.
You were like, are you okay?
And so, but at the same time, I remember we got done recording and they left, and I turned to Aubrie and was like, are you okay? Because that was a lot. And she was like, yeah, they aren't talking to me personally. They're talking to the people that harmed them in the past, and they're talking to the institution that could do better or whatever.
I think at the end of the day, the two of us have to not be defensive. That's the key. When having any kind of conversation with anybody, I mean, Kathleen has to talk to Mormons like almost every day.
There's a lot of Mormons.
They're her family. There's her family. They're
She's doing it right now.
I know.
Exactly. And so she could go into these conversations being a complete jerk, but she knows her audience, and so she doesn't say certain things. So when we set ourselves up for these interviews, we know our audience or our guest somewhat, because they kind of give us a little bit of a like window into who they are, and we think we know what we're going to say or hear what we're going to hear from them. But sometimes they throw us a curveball, and there have been interviews. We have multiple interviews that we are not putting on the air.
Nope. There's been 90% of our guests have been wonderful, lovely. We sit down and we discuss sometimes really hard topics, and we do it with love and grace and respect and understanding, both towards them and from them towards us. But there have been a few where we sit down with them and we're going, what is happening? We are not, this is not healthy or good or even worth listening to.
Or truthful.
Yeah. There's been times where people have shown up with a very definite agenda, and it's not what we're aligned with. And so, but that's just sort of the way it goes. I'm sure you yourself as a podcast, there are times where an interview starts one way and then it takes a hard left turn and you're going, wait a second, where okay, we're going this way now.
And that's been fun.
Yeah.
Totally get that. Yes.
Like I'd be
Yeah.
like, let me call my counselor because I have a lot to unload.
Right.
That was traumatizing.
Okay, so I want to like talk so much about this a few minutes ago, talking about friends who've done emotional work and like are working on
Mhm.
themselves. For me, that's been therapy and like
Yeah.
journaling and introspection. What does that look like
Yeah.
for each of you? And then maybe relationships with people who don't have that. What does that look like?
We recently dropped an episode talking about boundaries. And so I had to learn that you have to put up boundaries right away. And then people can gain more access to you as they show that the boundaries are being respected. And that has been very interesting to me after doing the work. Because I feel like I have been there. I have been the jerk that's been that person. And like you have been on our show, and we've done an episode with you, and you talked about how in your 30s, women in their 30s, they just kind of have an awakening of like certain things. And it's like in my 30s, I'm not here to hurt people. I'm not here to get back at people. I'm here to be a better human and to like find who God is now in my perspective, because I've been told in other people's perspective who God is, and I want to know who he is over here, or they.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As far as I go, like I'm in therapy, like me and my husband are in therapy. We needed marriage counseling really bad. And like that's one way where I really learned how to properly communicate with others and how bad I was at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and also like something that we do is when I was talking about letting go of your defenses, if you say something to me, I need to be curious about the tone in which you said it to me and the wordings, instead of being like judging. She meant that she hates me, or that she thinks I'm a terrible human, or that I'm not a good mom, or something like a low blow within my soul. And really, what you're saying is, why are you doing it that way? Because I want to know, you know what I mean? Instead of me being like, she's asking because she thinks I'm terrible at it. So that's something that really has helped me. My therapist told me is like, be curious instead of defensive, because curiosity can help you figure out what's really going on around you. And I don't journal, but I try, kind of do, I kind of don't. I fail at it. I don't do it often. Do you journal every day, Alyssa?
I've gone in and out. The one thing I was really good at is a gratitude journal.
Okay.
And that was like started as me trying to have more sincere prayers that were actually
Yeah.
real instead of repetitive. And then it's like turned into a therapy thing where it's like, this is how you recover from PTSD or like heal is by
Yeah.
doing this. So it's definitely been like a meditative, spiritual grounding practice. I've been out of it for like 2 years though. So I was really good at it for a long time. So back to like therapy and boundaries. I think that's what we like initially was what we were talking about when you guys met and you knew that you had this huge difference, but you really enjoyed each other. And it's like, I can still be around this person without becoming them or like merging with them or allowing influence without my consent.
Right.
It sounds like that was a place of choice rather than fear.
Yeah.
I think it's
And
allowing certain parts of the influence to infiltrate.
yes, like the good things, the things you
Yes.
admire, and things you
Well,
want.
Yeah.
I think every Christian should have an atheist friend,
I agree.
because I questioned before, but like she has a perspective, a Christian perspective, now atheist perspective. Like once Christian, now removed. So when you're like, that is really great because she knows where I'm coming from when I ask questions, or like, hey, give me your point of view on this, or whatever. And so it's been really helpful with me trying to figure out who God is now that I'm where I'm at with it. My deconstructing while staying Christian.
Yeah.
So
So for Kathleen, for you, you had to go through this big life change, this faith deconstruction. From the people I've seen that have gone through that, it's almost like it hurls you into, I mean, you could hurl you into depression. It can hurl you into therapy and being a little more open-minded. And there's a lot of angles it can go through, but I don't know. Do you feel like you have to hold space for people that don't understand you like a lot?
Yeah, I mean, living here, especially, even growing up, there was always a mentality of other people in my community do not understand where I'm coming from 100%. And it's very difficult to explain to people all of the beliefs of Mormonism, especially if they have no idea any of it. It is a
Yeah.
lot. It hasn't changed a whole lot. Now, as an atheist, my beliefs have switched, but those around me are still typical Bible Belt. There's a lot of non-denominational Christians. There's a lot of Baptists. There's a lot of different traditional Christianity beliefs around me in my day-to-day life that they're going to be there, and they're not going to understand where I'm coming from unless they want to know. And a lot of them, that's too much, and they don't, and that's okay. And so,
Mhm.
you know, but to speak on going through this process and it hurling you, it definitely does. I think a lot of people don't understand, especially, I can only speak to Mormonism, but I think a lot of people in the church don't really understand how much the church is interwoven in every aspect of your life until it's not there anymore, and you have to reevaluate everything. Anything that I ever thought, this is who I am and this is what I believe, was thrown completely out the window, and I had to start from scratch at 30 years old. And so it really does. A lot of people go through a lot of mental health crises during this time of depression, anxiety, PTSD. A lot of people have PTSD. A lot of people have a lot of anger and bitterness towards not only the church itself, but towards just the world, of feeling
Mhm.
like you've been betrayed or lied to your whole life. It's very difficult. So yeah, it can be very stress inducing. And a lot of people struggle for a long time with it. A lot of people's marriages don't last. A lot of people's families stop talking to them. A
Mhm.
lot of people lose everything: jobs, careers, families, spouses, children, out the window. And so I got very lucky that when my faith crisis was happening, it was happening at the same time as my husband. And we went through it together. And at the same time that was happening, his siblings, who we're very close to, had similar experiences. And so in leaving the church, we had a sort of a safety net of, we could lean on each other, where a lot
Mhm.
of people don't have that. So
Can you talk a little bit more about what it's been like navigating relationships with the family members that are still in?
yeah, it was very stressful at first, obviously. Both of our families live within an hour or so of us. My parents were converts in like the 70s, and my older sisters were converted with them. This was shortly before I was born. And so they chose this. This was something that they fought for, to become this. And so for me to say, never mind, no thanks, was sort of a slap in the face to them,
Mhm.
as you can imagine. And my husband's family are members of the church from like the 1800s, crossed the plains in hand carts, and were, original people from the beginning. And so for them, it's less of, this is almost like their culture. This is their family culture, and their legacy is tied in with the Mormon church. And so my in-laws especially had a very difficult time, especially since it wasn't just us, it was also their other kids as well. So within a year, all of their children just done,
Wow.
out of here, which was very difficult. I know. And I know a lot of the things that our families did that, looking back, caused some rifts were done out of fear or hurt or anguish, really, of my family is falling apart and I don't know why. And so there was a lot of things that were done that weren't cool, but I understand why. And on our
Mhm.
side as well, there were times that I went into conversations already defensive and already mad with my family, and looking for, like, ready, geared up for a fight, when there wasn't necessarily going to be one. But of course there was, because I was already ready for it.
Mhm.
And were obviously times where we could have navigated things better, but hindsight's 2020. And it, for a while there was a lot of awkwardness, and there was a lot of
for lack of a better word, just everybody's feelings were hurt all around all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody wanted that and nobody did it on purpose. But it happens. And so there's things that we still, I think, are working through. But I think one of the biggest things that helped it was time.
Mm-hmm.
My in-laws told us years after that, when we first told them that we weren't going to be members of the church anymore and we weren't going and we didn't want to be part of that, their initial fear was that we weren't going to allow them to see our kids anymore, which I was like, oh, that's crazy. Why would we do that? It has nothing. But that's what they basically, they had been taught over and over throughout the years, that people who leave the church, their lives disintegrate and they become monsters. Basically, they get divorced, they go into addictions, they go into, all this stuff that you're taught is horrible, bad all the time, is what happens to them. And so they were afraid that they were going to lose their family and lose their grandchildren. And as time went on, they saw that the only real thing that changed was I got a tattoo. Like, now I wear shorts.
Yeah, they see your shoulder.
Now, they have seen it happens. And so, the actual dynamic of our family is 100% the same. The only difference now is that, the surface things of our kids wear tank tops to play volleyball instead of long sleeves or something. As time has gone on, they've realized all around, we've realized that on our end, we've realized that they do still care about us regardless of our beliefs, because that was always a fear. And they've realized that we aren't, the plane we're on isn't crashing in the Andes. We're okay. They're okay. And as time has gone on, a lot of that has healed, just time-wise, just patience and understanding. And there's now we're able to have conversations and, starting to be able to actually discuss some of the reasons why Brandon left, and discuss some of the reasons why, our differences of opinion are there, and they're able to hear that and understand and not be angry or upset anymore. So it really is just time.
Yeah, that's really helpful to hear all that. Personally, I have some other stuff going on that makes it really, really good to hear.
Like, I think having the podcast and having the conversations, we did an episode on just Kathleen leaving the church, and then we did an episode with Kathleen's sister staying Mormon, and then we did an episode with you, Alyssa, and so we're representing different types of Mormons and people that have left church. And I think it's opened up a way for her and her family to have conversations.
My doing the episodes of explaining why I left the church was very helpful. It was a nonpartisan, safe place for my family to listen to it on their own terms. When they wanted to, they could take breaks, and they didn't have to have a response or rebuttal. They could just listen and understand. And I think that helped a lot. My parents especially talked to me about it afterwards, and were like, yeah, there were some of the things that we didn't know or didn't fully understand. And we understand now that you made choices that you felt were right for you and your life, and we can't fault you for that. And so, it did open up a way, an avenue of conversation that probably would have eventually, but it opened it up in a safe place where it was something that everyone could come to and feel conversation.
I like that. Okay, so to recap, for other people who are not us, we can have relationships based on healthy boundaries, and if that other person can't reciprocate and respect, then we opt out. For family members we don't get to choose, it's time and then listening to actually understand.
Yeah.
And giving each other space to heal. It sounds like healing and like basic human respect, shockingly enough. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of what I've been experiencing and kind of the political climate and some of the recent things. I feel like we've all lived through this really unique life event that I hope never happens again, where we've been isolated at home. There's been political turmoil. There's been economic upheaval. We've had a president that has emboldened a lot of people to share and grow their racist and misogynistic viewpoints. And now we are having rights taken away from us at the governmental level. And so I think I probably am similar to a lot of people where I have deleted a lot of people from my Facebook. I have made a lot of things private, or I alter who sees what. And I think Facebook is also just like for an older generation, it was more popular like 10 years ago. And so when I post something there or it gets shared from Instagram, it's going to this segment of the population that knew me when I was smaller and quieter and more conservative. All the things that made me fit the mold that they expected. And now I'm not the way people expected me. And so it's hard to show up in those spaces. I want to be me. I still value some of those relationships, and other ones are teaching me, oh, that's actually not a person that I can be with.
On my end, it's interesting. I think leaving the church before this happened, when it comes to social media, because like I said, most of my family is still active Mormons, and I have, a lot of people I grew up with that are still, I never got on like Facebook or Instagram or whatever and publicly denounced the church. Obviously now that we've come out with this podcast, I think they're all aware, but
well, yeah, people come out of the woodworks and they're like, oh, me too.
It's true. When we posted our podcast, a lot of people contacted me from growing up with, or even some family members that were like, I had no idea. And I was like, what are you talking about? Look at me, but okay. But when it comes to this like political stuff, when I do post things, I think people expect it because I'm an atheist now, and because
they've already written you off as this crazy outlier.
Exactly. So
I think that's what bothers people the most is that I am both Mormon and I have these beliefs, and I'm voting and I'm vocal, and I'm also pretty darn articulate about it, and like have sources. That freaks people out so much.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy?
I don't get hardly any pushback, but I think it's because they've already written me off as nuts. So
how great for you.
I know. I'm really kind of jealous of that, honestly.
It's the beauty of being the weird one is that you get to keep being weird and people aren't surprised.
I love it. Aubrie, what is that like for you? Because you're kind of like, you're like in your conservative space, but not representing the same.
No, and it's funny because when you showed up in our lives, Alyssa, I was like, this is so nice. Like somebody else. You're the Mormon me. And
I'll take it.
I need representation so that I can hold on and be like, stay strong. But I just choose not to have conversations with certain people because I know, like, I have a really good friend that she and I are getting to know each other, and she got my car, and I really have a lot of respect for her. And it's hard to have respect for somebody who has this kind of a viewpoint because it's so abstract to mine. But I think that this is where I might differ between the two of you because I can't be mad at everybody or I will explode as a person. I won't be the person that I am. I have to just give space to certain people. So whenever the Supreme Court decided to take off Roe v. Wade, I was very distraught. I like cried and was upset, and we felt that pain. She got in my car and she's like, did you see? And I already know who she is.
Yeah.
I had my assumptions. I assumed, and then she verified. She's like, did you see where our Roe v. Wade got pulled? And I was like, oh God, panic moment. And I was like, yeah, how crazy, right? And she's like, yeah, I didn't. And I was like, I didn't expect that to even happen. She's like, I know, after all these years. And then both of us, like, it clicked in her mind that she's like, oh crap, because she's seen our pride flags out in our front yard and our kids run around with them. And so she's like, wait, and we left it at that. And I appreciated it so much because I don't want to have this conversation because I'm 100% going to be like, you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you not realize what this means for your daughters if they have a like emergency? And in the state of Oklahoma, it's not going to look good in their favor. And we were told by a doctor recently that someone had to call the lawyers of the hospital to make sure they could help this lady who had an ectopic pregnancy in the emergency room in Oklahoma. Like it was a serious
very
situation.
real. It's absolutely real.
That's life or death, guys. Like this isn't just a baby. This is the mother who wants to be alive and probably has children and a husband and family. Like that's, I don't want my girls to have to worry about that. I don't want to have to worry about that for my girls. Like, anyways, so I just have to choose not to have these conversations. And, or I go to church and I've had to sit in front of so I have at church, I am called a coach, and a coach has leaders under them, and I'm in the youth group. So my leaders are leaders over the youth girls, the high school girls. So I kind of had to sit down in front of a leader and have a conversation with them about someone else saying they were bi. And she was just like, I don't feel comfortable with this, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, there's an agenda against our kids and they're trying to infiltrate our children. I was literally looking at her like, have you lost your damn mind? So anyways, with that being said, I had to sit there and look at her and say, I don't agree with anything you're saying right now. And we will put you in a place where you're comfortable. And I now know, and I didn't tell this to her, I now know not to put any queer students in your group because you are so homophobic and you have such a weird worldview that it would be very awful to those kids. And I know that I'm not going to know every queer student in this place, but something that I do, that I don't open these conversations up, but I do wear, like I have a Kamala Harris shirt on right now. So people will know, like, and then I go to church and I wear a lot of rainbow stuff so that it shows my allyship to students, and the pastors know my allyship. And it was at one point up for discussion on if I could continue in the position that I'm in with the leadership role that I'm in, because is she following the rules of the Bible? And I'm like, I'm just here to love people like Jesus said to love people. So with that being said, I don't have hard conversations, but then when I have to, it's with a lot of grace. So in love towards the people that are coming at me negatively towards a certain subject. So that, because I know that I can't change anybody's mind with more anger spewing back at them. But I believe that if I can be like, hands up, like I ain't about to fight with you about this, unless I have to, I will throw hands, but only when necessary. But I feel like if you just humble yourself a little bit and you don't get defensive, people will soften up to it. I've seen it happen where they can have a conversation with you, and then you can either agree to disagree, and there might be a seed planted with that person and be like, oh yeah, there might be gay kids in this church who need to know Jesus, and I'm not helping them in that by acting the way I'm acting.
It's interesting, my own, in the last few years, but especially in the last few weeks, my own mentality going into things is sort of like what we talked about when we did our episode with you, Alyssa, the mentality of in your 30s, you stop caring about what you should be doing or what you should be thinking, and you start thinking differently. And I'm really starting to come into that even more than I thought I was. I thought I was like really in there, but now I'm like, oh, okay.
I'm just like off living my best life, and the pandemic helped me do that. I mean, we lived in a freaking RV for 9 months, traveling. Wow. Like I've been like out of other people's expectations for so long that then when I just show up authentically in a non-traditional way, like I'm not trying to start a fight. I'm just like being who I am. And then I'm told that I'm so controversial and I'm so negative. And it's like, I'm just different than what you expected. And now you're all these men are telling me that like I am the problem, and it's like, all right, I'm just gonna go where I can be appreciated. But that's really hard when it's family. Like, what are you gonna opt out of family? That's a bigger deal than just deleting a Facebook friend.
It is.
And it comes with a lot more baggage too. There's no easy way to navigate that. There's no easy way.
Yeah.
There are multiple men in my family on if I say it, it's obvious. So,
yes. No, I
which is fine. It's not a secret. But anyways, that we have opted out from, we no longer do Christmas with certain family. We refuse. But Like, that is good. That's okay, because we're not serving them by being around them, and let alone like them being in our lives and like having to deal with their negative grossness. It's fine. I think it's just coming to terms with certain people, even if they're your family, aren't necessarily meant to be in your everyday life or even your holiday life. And that's something that my husband and I have had to come to terms with, and it sucks at first. But once you freaking take the step forward, it is liberating. It's okay, now I can 100% be who I am, and go from there. And this whole like blood is thicker than water situation that we keep hearing, I'm like, some of these people with the same blood as me are crazy, and I don't want to claim that negative energy. Like, so I don't know. I mean, even if it's just a step back from one holiday, family reunion, one holiday, whatever, anything, it's kind of worth the peace of mind of not dealing with the bull honky you have to deal with when they are around. Because my husband and my uncle have gotten into a like verbal altercation at Christmas. I was like,
yeah,
we're not over a Oklahoma healthcare system for people who are low income. Like, my husband was on that, and my uncle was talking so much crap about my in-laws who worked really freaking hard and could still not provide healthcare for their kids. And so they got in a fight over it. It's like, you shouldn't have to have those kind of conversations with people. I mean, if you can have a conversation with somebody who's like, I want to hear about what it was like to live off of the system, because I don't know, and I have a perspective that may be like really not proper, then let's have a conversation. If you're going to just talk crap about it, then I'm not having a conversation with you.
Well,
I don't have time for that.
It's a difference of motivation. Like, if you're listening to understand, if you're asking
Yes,
because you're curious, and like maybe you have an opinion, but you're also like, I haven't lived it. Like, that is such different energy
true.
than attacking somebody. I shared a quote recently, and it was about Christianity, but I think it applies here too, where it said certainty is like the downfall of Christians. When we speak from a place of knowing everything, there is no space for anybody else, and there's no space for other perspectives. And I think it's the same politically or with lived experience. Like,
Right.
I can only speak from my lived experience. I am one person. And I have to be able, like, if I'm going to function in society, I have to be able to learn from other humans. And I can't just reject everything that doesn't fit my perspective. And like, certainty, I think, is the opposite of curiosity. And I think curiosity is one of the main entryways to empathy. If we want to understand others, we have to actually listen to them, and we have to actually believe what they say.
Right.
And I just think that's what's lacking. And I know it's hard to have these
100%.
conversations when we ourselves are hurting. Like, I know a lot of us are in mourning over Roe v. Wade, and it's not going to be constructive to come at us and ask why we're upset right now. It's just, it's not. And I would hope that, like, that might not click for people that don't think it's a big deal, but like, that is where it is right now. Like, you should be respecting our space a little bit. Right?
And I agree. And should we be respecting their space? Yes.
Yeah, I agree, but and I totally agree.
Kathleen's saying no.
It's when people step into my world and then want to, tell me I'm wrong or have me explain from my trauma or whatever why they are problematic. Like, that is way too much to expect. It's not an emotionally intelligent thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, there's the other perspective where it's like anything less than full support is equating more deaths. And I actually do agree with that. I've also been on the other side where I've been really conservative and I just didn't know. And so then it's like spoon feeding people, helping them understand, like, abortion is healthcare. Sounds so radical, but it's like, but if you have an ectopic pregnancy, you're going to want that option. Or like just like spoon feeding them to like get to the wider perspective. But yeah, when that curiosity isn't there, when it's judgment and when it's certainty, I think that's got to be my boundary.
Yeah. and I think there definitely needs to be boundaries on when you give the same respect that you're expected. So like when it does come down to Roe v. Wade, am I going to respect the other person's perspective? I'm not going to agree with them. And if they're coming at me, yelling at me, I have zero respect. But my boundary is not having the conversation. So what I would say is I'm not talking about this with you is what I would say. And I think what Kathleen would say is, let's talk about this. And I'm going to tell you how wrong you are. And I think that's great. My husband's the same way. And I'm literally like, I'm not going to yell at a literal rock. This person is a literal rock in front of me. But if this person is able to be spoon-fed information and like receive it, then I think it's great. And I think that people like Kathleen and my husband can get across, but I also think that there might be a way that it won't get across. And I'm at that part, I'm like, I'm not wasting my breath. But I love the people that are ready to scream and yell, because we need those type of people.
Yeah, I think to what you're saying, Aubrie, if somebody is closed off to the information, I can scream till I'm blue in the face. But there is it's a kitschy quote that you see all the time, but it's basically well-behaved women don't make history.
Yeah.
And the mentality, we talk about, the movement starting in the 70s to give more rights and more equality to LGBTQ people started with the Stonewall riots. It started with, and the suffragette movement was not peaceful. These women throwing things and arrested and beaten. And so all of the movements that we know that caused real change and real good weren't peaceful in the sense of people stood quietly explaining how they felt. That does do wonderful things, and it is very needed. But we need someone to scream in the face of the politicians and to throw some bricks. At this point, that's where I'm at. Like, I'm about to burn this motherfucker down. But I'm at the point where I can fill that role. I can go march and scream till my voice is gone, so that there's a crowd outside of City Hall and the politicians are going, wait a second, we misread how our constituents feel about this. Obviously, people are angry. And then at the same time, people like Aubrie, who are more comfortable in the explaining and understanding and helping people to understand the reasons why people are angry, is extremely necessary too. So I think it what you're comfortable with and what you're able to do for your own. And there are times like, I started researching and I've been to one march and there was another one like the next day, and I was like, mentally, I can't do two in a row. It was exhilarating, and it felt good to be part of a group of people who understood why I was upset without me having to bash it over the head, but it was mentally exhausting as well, putting myself in that space. And so you have to, no matter how you're going about things, you have to make space for yourself mentally to heal, process, and be okay. And but yeah, I am at the point where I'm not, I hope none of my neighbors say anything, because then we won't be friends anymore. Yeah. Like I'm at that point, like I'm mad. Girl's mad.
Right. And like, it's also understandable.
Well, there's also a difference of, I think for the two of you who are religious, you are experiencing loss of your rights as a woman. I am also experiencing that. I'm also experiencing loss of my rights to religion. I am not part of this religion, and it is being forced upon me. I purposely left this religion, and now I'm being told that I have to live my life according to how someone else. I have spent my entire life being told by octogenarian white men what to do with my body, and I'm tired of it. I left it on purpose so that I didn't have to deal with that anymore. And now a bunch of octogenarian white men are now coming back and telling me that I have to do what the Bible says. I'm not part of this book club on purpose. And so it's that mentality too of, that's another reason why I'm so angry, is that my constitutional rights to healthcare are being erased. My constitutional rights to practice my own religion or lack thereof are being erased. And I'm very frustrated by it. it's very infuriating that I shouldn't have to be doing this, and I am.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're moving backwards.
Yeah.
It's moving. That's the part that kills me, is like, okay, maybe things aren't great, maybe, but like, we're moving forward. I'm hopeful. No, we're like literally moving back.
And they're not baby steps. These are huge words. Huge. And they just keep rolling out every day. I feel like there's another, the Supreme Court's now reevaluating this, and now we're talking about this. And they're disgusting, and they're infuriating. And at some point something's got to give, where either I don't know what it's going to be, but either these laws start going back and the Supreme Court and the laws start flipping again, or things are going to get scary. And I'm ready for both. At this point, I'm ready. Mm-hmm. It's not sit here. I don't like this.
I appreciate that. Thank you for pointing that out, because so many of us don't understand that part of it. Like I've heard from people who are Jewish where it's like, no, like we have to save the woman in the case of, a medical crisis. But when you're not Christian, so it's like, you get your own set of beliefs and we're forcing them on you. And I hope that we all like someone engaging in a conversation with you, in order for it to be productive, they need to understand and respect that. And there's so many, and myself included, where I'm just insulated for some of those things. And so I don't understand, why are these people getting so angry? Like 10 years ago, that was me. Like, why are all these angry feminists? Like they're just so angry. And it's like, you don't understand. You haven't been given accurate history, and your perspective is so limited, and you have so much privilege that it's not productive.
Yeah.
Okay, this has been a really great conversation. I feel like we could just go on and on and on.
Same.
But we do need to close. Do you want to share maybe some last minute ideas on how to have friendships and relationships with people that do disagree?
I think when it comes to having friendships with people that disagree, I think you have to go into it understanding that you're not going to change each other's minds, and that shouldn't be your goal. I think with Aubrie and I'm not going to deconvert her from Christianity, and I don't want to do that, because I want her to be happy, and I want her to live the life that is working for her, and whatever that is, I'm supporting it. And so I'm going in with a friendship of uplifting her and listening to her and making sure she feels my respect and love and appreciation, not me trying to change her mind. And I know that she is the same way towards me. And so I think that's inevitably why we work so well together. Is there is the baseline of our friendship is a mutual respect for one another, that she is who she is and I am who I am, and we can make that work together regardless of our opinions on this or that or the other.
Yeah, I agree. As a Christian, I'm expected to evangelize, and I dropped that with Kathleen, knowing that it wasn't going to work. Sorry. And so whenever you can just like literally just allow the people in front of you to be who they are without expectations, you have to drop expectations and then set up boundaries. But I would say I don't have very many boundaries with Kathleen, but I do with a lot of other friends. My conservative friends, I have a lot of boundaries in which I will not discuss certain things with them. And maturity, bettering yourself, constantly trying to better yourself, read books and widen your perspective and hear other voices that are not yours, that are not, if you were a white woman in America that is married to a man and are suburban, you're not hearing, if you're just listening to the women you go eat lunch with that are at your church, you're not hearing all the voices you need to hear. You need to have people of color in your life. You need to have a queer community around you, and you need to have disenfranchised people in front of you to listen to so that you can become a better person. And I 100% believe that that has changed my life recently, because I wasn't listening. I was kind of just, moseying around. And like you said, the pandemic really rattled the world. And I'm thankful for it, because it has helped me. you shouldn't just have one type of person in your circle at all. It's not helping you at all. And having an open mind.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and then tell us a little bit about your podcast if people want to hang out more.
So it is called the Christain and the Atheist podcast. You can find us on any platform, Spotify, Apple, we're out there. We're coming back in September. We're taking a minute because it's summer. And we have a bunch of stuff out there right now. We're in our second season. We have Alyssa on the show. We have a drag queen.
People who are religious, people who aren't. We've interviewed people who are within the queer community. We interviewed some Black women talking about their experiences in America and how they differ from ours as white women. We talk about basically any topic. We have something out there on it. We have a Harry Potter episode. We have so many different things out there. You can find something you like, but we do go at things with the mentality of we are two people with differing opinions. Let the other people with differing opinions and all learn from each other. The point of our show is, like we've been talking today, to show that you can find common ground with just about anybody if you're just willing to listen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really enjoy your show for that reason. It was so fun to be a guest on that. And I know my episode is a great example of three women coming together, having shared values and shared morals, but also very different religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And having respect for each other's beliefs and also having opinions like
Yeah.
for sure. But
Yeah.
I just appreciated showing up in that space and having that level of respect. And that's my goal when we're talking about friendships and relationships. What does an ambitious relationship look like? Anything where you're trying to be a friend with someone who is different than you and has a different life plan and, life perspective. There's so much value in that because honestly, we're never going to find someone that's exactly the same as us unless we're just all pretending that we agree. And that's not my vibe. I can't do that. I can't be that inauthentic. And I'm not interested in putting my energy towards that anymore. And I know now that you are as well. And there's so many of us now, and we're navigating this and we're exhausted and we are upset, and it's also valid. So thank you for coming on today and talking about these hard topics.
It was fun.
Being an example.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you so much for having us on here and having this conversation, because it's not everybody wants to have it. So I appreciate you giving us this space.
Thanks so much for joining us today. This has been another episode of the Women of Ambition podcast, and I am your host, Alyssa Calder-Hume. If you like what you heard today, make sure and check out all of our other episodes. They are all available online anywhere podcasts are available. Apple is a popular one, Spotify, or you can just go straight to my website, which is womenofambitionpodcast.com. I always appreciate reviews and feedback. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Are we going to post this video?
Maybe a screenshot. I don't think any of us are ready for the outside world right now. This is an emergency. This is an emergency podcast.
Yes.
This isn't the pre-version.
It's totally fine.
Care.
This is what we really look like. This is how we look every day.
This is going to make a really good outtake. Okay.
Yeah.